Imagine walking into a dark room you've never been in before. You can't see the floor, the furniture, or the walls. You're hesitant, afraid you might trip, bump into something, or worse, fall. Now imagine a voice, strong, calm, reassuring, telling you, take a step forward, you're safe. Every part of you wants to hesitate. But what if I fall? What if I get hurt? The room is unfamiliar, the path uncertain. And yet, you step forward? That's faith, that's trust. And when it comes to trusting God, it often feels the same way. We don't always understand where He's leading us. The road seems unclear. The struggle feels unfair. But what if, instead of resisting, we learn to lean in, to trust, even when we don't understand? Let's talk about it. At its core, faith isn't about having all the answers or understanding every detail. It's about trusting in something beyond ourselves, something greater than what we can see, hear, or touch. True faith requires us to step into the unknown without the comfort of certainty. It's trusting in the unseen, the unproven, and the unexplainable. Think about it for a moment. When you have faith, you don't need to have everything figured out. Faith isn't about securing the perfect plan or knowing how everything will unfold. Faith is choosing to believe that there is a purpose, even when it's unclear. It's about moving forward, even when the path ahead looks uncertain. This is where most people hesitate, because certainty feels safe. When we have control over the situation, when we can predict what will happen next, it's easy to trust. But what happens when that certainty isn't there? What happens when the plan we've created doesn't work out, or the outcome is beyond our understanding? That's when faith is truly tested. Faith demands we let go of the need for control. It calls us to trust in the midst of chaos, in the absence of answers, and often when everything around us feels unstable. It's the belief that even though we don't see the full picture, there's a greater plan at work. One that we may not fully comprehend right now, but that we can trust is good. Take a moment and think about the moments in your life when you didn't have the answers, when the outcome was uncertain. How did you move forward? It's likely that in those moments, you didn't have a complete understanding of why things were happening the way they were. But something within you kept you going. Whether it was the belief that things would get better, the support of someone you trusted, or just the instinct to hold on. That's faith in action. It's a trust that doesn't require proof, a belief that remains even when the world feels like it's falling apart. When we operate from a place of certainty, we limit ourselves, we close ourselves off to possibilities. But when we embrace faith, we open ourselves up to growth. It becomes a journey, not a destination. And this is the paradox of faith. It's in the moments of uncertainty, the times we don't have all the answers, that we grow the most. Faith transforms us, not because we understand everything, but because we are willing to move forward despite the unknowns. One of the greatest challenges in life is recognizing that our view of the world is incredibly narrow. We tend to see things from one point of view, our own, and that often leads us to misunderstand or even misjudge the bigger picture. This limitation of perspective is something that's easy to overlook, but it plays a crucial role in how we understand and experience our lives, especially when it comes to faith. Consider the analogy of a person standing in front of a painting. If you're too close to the canvas, you can only see a small portion of the artwork. Maybe a brushstroke here, a swirl of color there, but you can't appreciate the full picture. It's only when you step back, gain a bit of distance, and look at the entire painting that you begin to understand the intention behind the brushstrokes. The artist had a vision that could only be seen from a certain perspective, one that wasn't obvious up close. In the same way, our understanding of life is often limited by our proximity to the events and circumstances happening around us. When we're in the middle of a struggle, a challenge, or an unclear situation, all we see is what's directly in front of us. We're consumed by the immediate concerns, the pain, the confusion, and the uncertainty. But just as with the painting, our view is incomplete. There's more to the picture than what we can see in that moment. This limited perspective can make it difficult to trust. We want to know the outcome, to understand why things are happening the way they are. We want to see the end result before we take the next step. But God doesn't give us the full picture. He doesn't show us the entire canvas of our lives. Instead, He reveals what we need in the moment, the small details, the next step, the part of the plan that we can handle right now. We may not understand why we're going through certain trials or why things don't make sense, but what we fail to recognize is that our limited perspective doesn't mean that the greater picture isn't unfolding. It just means that we can't see it yet. Think about how a child might view their parents' actions. A child doesn't understand why their parent makes certain decisions, why they can't have candy before dinner, why they have to go to bed early, or why they have to do their homework before playing. From the child's point of view, these actions may seem harsh or unfair, but the parent, with a broader perspective, understands the child's needs in a way that the child cannot. The parent sees what the child cannot, the importance of healthy eating habits, the value of rest, the long-term benefits of discipline. Similarly, in our lives, God sees what we cannot. While we may be focused on the present moment, the struggles, the pain, the unanswered questions, God sees the entire timeline of our lives. He sees the connections between moments that we cannot yet comprehend. He understands the lessons we need to learn, the growth we need to undergo, and the timing that will bring everything together. What we experience as loss or confusion may, from God's perspective, be a necessary step towards something greater that we cannot yet see. It's important to remember that just because we can't see the full picture doesn't mean it isn't there. It doesn't mean that everything is falling apart. It's simply a matter of perspective. When we trust that God has a plan, we're choosing to acknowledge that our limited view doesn't negate the reality of a greater plan unfolding. It's like watching a movie for the first time. We don't understand all the plot twists or the significance of every character's actions, but as the story progresses, the pieces begin to come together. The ending makes sense only after we've seen the full story. In our lives, we often don't get to see the full story as it's happening, but that doesn't mean it's not being written. The scenes of your life that seem out of place, the chapters that seem confusing, and the plot twists that leave you questioning, these are all part of the larger narrative. We may not be able to see it now, but trust comes when we believe that there is a bigger plan at work, even in the moments when we don't understand the individual pieces. Understanding that our perspective is limited is the first step toward faith. When we acknowledge that we don't have all the answers, that we can't see the full picture, we open ourselves up to trust. Trust that God's perspective is far greater than ours. Trust that He sees what we can't, and that His understanding of our lives is complete, even when ours is partial. In embracing this truth, we release the need to control every detail and allow ourselves to rest in the confidence that God's view is infinitely broader and clearer than our own. We all face difficult moments in life. Moments when everything seems to be going wrong, when obstacles stand in our way, and when it feels like the world is against us. It's natural to want to avoid pain, struggle, and difficulty. But what if we've been looking at challenges the wrong way? What if instead of seeing them as setbacks, we started seeing them as opportunities for growth? What if every challenge, no matter how painful, was actually a chance to build something stronger within ourselves? Life isn't meant to be smooth sailing. In fact, if everything were easy, we wouldn't grow. Growth doesn't happen in comfortable, predictable environments. Growth happens when we push against resistance. It's the same principle that applies to physical strength. Muscles don't grow when they aren't challenged. They grow when they're subjected to stress, to pressure, to something that forces them to adapt and become stronger. The same is true for our mental, emotional, spiritual strength. Think about the process of forging metal. When metal is first mined, it's rough and unrefined. But through intense heat and pressure, it begins to change. It becomes more durable, more flexible, more resilient. The fire doesn't destroy the metal, it transforms it. The heat and pressure force the metal to adapt and become something far stronger than it was before. The same transformation happens in our lives when we face challenges. While the heat of hardship may feel unbearable at times, it's what refines us. It's what makes us stronger. Consider a tree. A young tree's roots aren't yet deep and its trunk is fragile, but as the tree faces storms, heavy winds, and the weight of the seasons, its roots grow deeper. Its trunk grows sturdier, and it becomes more resilient to the forces around it. If the tree were never exposed to those challenges, it would remain weak, unable to withstand the storms that would inevitably come. It's only through enduring these challenges that the tree develops the strength it needs to stand tall. Now, similarly, we can't develop the strength we need to face life's storms unless we go through the struggles. When we encounter difficulties, we're being given the chance to deepen our roots, strengthen our resolve, and build the resilience we need for the future. Every challenge is an opportunity to grow, an opportunity to discover what we're truly capable of. Look back at your own life for a moment. Think of the moments when you thought you couldn't go on, when the road ahead seemed impossible. How many times have you found yourself stronger on the other side of those moments? It wasn't the easy times that shaped you, it was the tough times. It was the moments when you felt like giving up, but somehow found the strength to keep going. Those moments didn't just break you. This idea can be difficult to accept, especially when we're in the middle of a challenging situation. It's easy to get discouraged, to feel like we're failing, or to question why we're going through something so difficult. But what if the pain you're feeling right now is actually the catalyst for your growth? What if the struggles you're facing are the very thing that's going to help you become the person you're meant to be? Think of athletes training for a competition. They push their bodies to their limits, often enduring pain, exhaustion, and setbacks. But the pain isn't the end of the story, it's a part of the process. The body is adapting to the stress, growing stronger with each challenge it faces. Without that challenge, there would be no progress. Without that struggle, there would be no victory. The same is true for our emotional and spiritual growth. We don't grow by staying in our comfort zone. We grow when we face adversity, when we are forced to confront our fears, our limitations, and our weaknesses. It's through those moments of struggle that we discover our true strength. And it's through those moments that we become more equipped to face the next challenge. When you're in the middle of a challenge, it may seem like the world is against you, but it's important to remember that the challenge is not the enemy, it's the teacher. It's shaping you. It's preparing you for something greater. Strength doesn't come from avoiding difficulties. It comes from confronting them head-on, learning from them, and allowing them to transform you. Even in the hardest moments, remember that challenges are building something within you. They're teaching you resilience, patience, perseverance, and faith. Each trial you face is an opportunity to become a better version of yourself, a stronger version of yourself, a version that can withstand even greater challenges in the future. You might not see the strength being built in the moment, but just like the tree growing deeper roots or the athlete building muscle, your growth is happening quietly, powerfully, and steadily. In a world where we're constantly told to take control, to fight for what we want, and to never give up, the idea of surrender seems counterintuitive. How can giving up, relinquishing control, and letting go of our grip on life lead to peace? Isn't peace something we have to work hard for, something that's earned through effort and struggle? And yet, time and time again, we see that the opposite is true. Surrender, the act of releasing control, of trusting in something greater than ourselves, actually leads us to a deeper, more lasting peace. At its core, surrender is not about weakness or defeat. It's about trust. It's about recognizing that we don't have the power to control everything, and that trying to do so only brings stress, anxiety, and frustration. Life is unpredictable, and no matter how hard we try, we can't control every outcome, every situation, or every person. Surrender is the realization that we are not in control of everything, and that's okay. It's about accepting that we don't have to do it all, and that it's okay to let go. When we try to control every detail of our lives, we are essentially fighting against the flow of life. We are resisting what is happening right now. And in doing so, we create tension, stress, and inner turmoil. It's like trying to swim upstream against a powerful current. The more we struggle, the harder it becomes, and the more exhausted we feel. But when we surrender to the current, when we stop fighting it, when we allow ourselves to go with the flow, there is ease. The current, instead of dragging us under, carries us forward. In the same way, surrendering to the flow of life brings peace, because we stop resisting the inevitable. Surrender doesn't mean giving up on your dreams, goals, or aspirations. It doesn't mean passivity or indifference. Rather, it means releasing the need to control the outcome and trusting that everything will unfold as it's meant to. Surrender is about accepting that some things are beyond our understanding and beyond our control, and finding peace in that acceptance. It's the recognition that we don't need to have all the answers right now, that not everything needs to be fixed immediately, and that sometimes the best thing we can do is let go and trust that the path we're on is leading us where we need to go. Think of a time when you've struggled with something, whether it's a personal challenge, a relationship, or a goal. Perhaps you tried to control every aspect of the situation, tried to force things to go your way. Maybe you found yourself frustrated, anxious, and overwhelmed. But then, at some point, you realized that no amount of effort or control was going to change the outcome. And so, you let go. You stopped trying to control the situation, and you surrendered to whatever would come. And in that moment of surrender, there was a shift. The weight you were carrying began to lighten, the tension eased, and eventually, you found peace, not because the situation had changed, but because your response to it had changed. This is the paradox of surrender. It's only when we let go of the need to control that we find freedom. By surrendering to life, we stop carrying the heavy burden of trying to manage every aspect of our existence. We stop feeling responsible for things that are beyond our control, and in doing so, we find relief. The struggle eases, the anxiety fades, and what remains is peace, a peace that comes not from circumstances changing, but from our acceptance of what is. There's a profound wisdom in surrender. It teaches us humility, patience, and trust. We come to understand that we are not the center of the universe, that we are part of something much larger, something beyond our comprehension. We learn to trust that there is a bigger plan, even if we can't see it right now. And in that trust, we find peace. It's the peace that comes from knowing that everything is unfolding as it should, even when we don't understand why things are happening the way they are. In fact, surrender often brings us closer to the present moment. When we let go of our need to control the future, we free ourselves from worry and fear. We stop obsessing over what might happen and instead embrace what is happening now. We stop being consumed by the past or the future, and we start living in the moment, finding peace in the present. Surrender also requires a deep sense of faith. It's an act of trust, of believing that something greater than ourselves is guiding us. It's trusting that we are not alone, that we are being supported, even when we don't see the way forward. It's trusting that even in our darkest moments, there is a light that will guide us through. When we surrender, we are not giving up. We are instead surrendering our need to control and allowing peace to enter. We are accepting the reality of what is, trusting that the path we're on, even if it seems unclear, is exactly where we need to be. In this surrender, we find a profound sense of freedom, a freedom that comes from letting go and allowing life to unfold in its own time and in its own way. When we embark on any endeavor, we are often focused on the destination, the goal we want to reach, the success we want to achieve, or the outcome we're striving for. The end result is clear in our minds, and it's easy to get caught up in the pursuit of that singular point. We envision ourselves at the finish line, having accomplished our dreams, and all the hard work and sacrifice will finally have been worth it. But the truth is, the evidence of our growth, our strength, and our transformation doesn't always come from the destination itself. It's in the journey. The process, the path we walk, the moments of struggle and triumph are where the true evidence lies. Often, we're so fixated on the end goal that we fail to recognize the subtle yet significant changes that are happening within us as we move through life's journey. When we look back at where we started, the growth we've experienced can be startling, but in the moment, it's not always as visible. The journey can feel tedious, repetitive, and even discouraging. We can easily get lost in the daily grind, thinking that nothing is changing, that we're stuck in a pattern, or that we're not making any progress at all. But the truth is, the evidence is there. It's just not always as obvious as we think it should be. Take a moment to reflect on a time when you were working towards something important. Perhaps it was a personal goal, a career achievement, or a long-term aspiration. At the time, it may have felt like an endless stretch of effort with no immediate rewards. You might have questioned whether you were on the right path, whether your hard work was paying off, or whether you were even making a difference. But as time went on, and as you reached the end of that journey, you were able to look back and see how far you had come. The progress was evident, not in the moment-to-moment grind, but in the distance between where you started and where you ended up. It's easy to overlook the evidence of our growth as we're walking the path. Life is a series of small steps, each one building on the last. The change is gradual, incremental, and often imperceptible in the moment. But it's in these small, consistent actions that we develop the strength, wisdom, and resilience we need to reach our goals. Each challenge, each setback, and each moment of perseverance is a building block that shapes who we are and prepares us for what's ahead. The evidence of our progress lies not in the final result, but in how we respond to the process itself. This is why it's so important to trust the journey, even when it feels uncertain or difficult. We may not see the full picture as we're moving through it, but the transformation is happening. Each step, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant, is part of a larger process of growth and self-discovery. The evidence is in the lessons we learn along the way, the strength we build through our challenges, and the character we develop as we continue forward. If we are constantly focused on the outcome, we miss the beauty and the richness of the journey itself. Life isn't just about the destination. It's about what happens along the way. The evidence of a life well lived isn't solely found in what we achieve at the end. It's in the growth we experience, the people we become, and the changes we undergo as we move through life's many stages. Think about the journey of a river. A river starts at its source, flowing through various landscapes, carving out valleys, shaping the land, and encountering obstacles along the way. The river may encounter rocks, fallen trees, or dry patches where the water seems to disappear, but over time it continues to move forward, carving deeper and deeper into the earth. When we look at the river from the beginning, we may not see the full extent of its power, its reach, or its impact. But over time, the evidence of its journey is clear. It has shaped the land, nourished the environment, and created something lasting and powerful. Our lives are much like that river. We may not see the impact we're having in the moment, and we may not fully appreciate how far we've come. But as time passes, the evidence becomes clear. The struggles we've faced, the decisions we've made, and the steps we've taken have all contributed to our growth. They've shaped who we are today, and they've prepared us for what's ahead. And this is why it's essential to trust the journey, even when it feels like you're not making progress. The evidence isn't always immediately visible, but it's there. It's in the strength you've gained from overcoming obstacles. It's in the wisdom you've gained from facing challenges. It's in the perseverance you've built from pushing through tough times. All of these elements form the evidence of your growth, your transformation, and your progress. Evidence that may not be immediately apparent, but that will reveal itself in time. Sometimes the greatest lessons we learn are not in reaching the destination, but in what we discover along the way. We often think that when we reach our goals, the journey will be over and we'll have the evidence of our success. But in reality, the journey is never truly finished. There is always more to learn, more to experience, and more to become. The evidence of a life well lived is not in the final result, but in the ongoing process of growth, change, and discovery. And so when you find yourself on a difficult path, feeling like progress is slow or uncertain, remember that the evidence of your journey is already within you. It's in the steps you've taken, the lessons you've learned, and the person you're becoming. Keep moving forward, and one day you'll look back and see the full picture. The evidence will be undeniable. In conclusion, the journey itself is where the true evidence of our growth lies. While we often focus on the destination, the success, or the final outcome, it is the steps we take along the way that shape who we are and prepare us for what's ahead. Each challenge, each obstacle, and each moment of perseverance builds upon the last, slowly transforming us into the people we need to be. The progress may not always be visible in the moment, but with time, we begin to see the impact of our journey in the strength we've gained, the wisdom we've acquired, and the resilience we've developed. Trusting the process and embracing the journey, even when it's difficult, allows us to grow into a more powerful, wiser version of ourselves. The evidence is there in the lessons learned, the progress made, and the transformation that occurs, whether we see it immediately or not. Keep moving forward, for the journey is where the evidence of your growth and your true potential lies.